I'm talking about coffee and quitting coffee, but really the huge wake-up call that I'm going through in my life is the theme of addiction and letting go of addictions. Hi there, my name is Ali. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm making a video that I truly never thought in this lifetime I would ever be making, and that is why I've decided to stop drinking coffee. And all of this is spurred by a recent, almost accidental wake-up call to how coffee has been this silent, toxic, and all-pervasive influence in my life. This wake-up call shook me to the core, and it might sound like I'm being dramatic right now. I'm not. Literally, I was shook to the core because I realized this is the thing with self-actualization and becoming the next better level of yourself. It's like sometimes it's the things that you never questioned. It's the things that you thought were helping you all along that have been insanely holding you back. And recently I realized that coffee is one of those things to me. And because coffee has been such a core part of my identity and a motivational tool for me, I'll get all into that later in this video, but it was such a turbulent and chaotic process that I've been through in the past few days. And since I've had so many insights and also just honestly fears around this space, I wanted to make a video and talk all about it. Because recently I've been called to make a lot of content on overcoming our fears, overcoming our limitations, and believing in our infinitely regenerative power and energy. And so I realized I literally am such a hypocrite if I'm drinking coffee and not realizing how dependent I am on that, and how it's taking away my own real internally sourced power. This is a huge shock to me that I'm quitting coffee. Watch this video because, oh my gosh, I feel like it's become such a psychology/inner work deep dive for me, even though you might be like, Ali, what are you talking about? It's literally just a beverage that we're talking about here, which also, no, it's a drug, which for some reason I just low-key just discovered that recently. I don't know how I've been alive all this time and not really seen coffee as a drug, which it is. But then even crazier is I'm going to explain how all of this relates back to self-actualization, self-love, the process of personal development and transformation, and etc. And also, if you clicked on this video, you will either identify as a coffee drinker, and there's obviously a spectrum of how much you drink coffee and how much you identify as being a coffeeholic or a coffee addict, or you're going to identify with not being a coffee drinker. Every time I meet a person like this, I'm just like, what? We must not be the same species. If you are a coffee drinker, you're gonna keep watching this video and you're gonna be like, WTF. And if you're not a coffee drinker, you're equally gonna be like, WTF when you watch this video. Because believe me, I have a wild relationship with coffee, which I'm gonna talk more about. We're gonna get into it. But very recently, I realized, unfortunately, that my relationship with coffee is a microcosm of all the other profound issues and struggles in my life. And if you think that coffee couldn't get so deep, it is literally about to in this video. Coffee is a drug. Did you know that? It was literally used as a tool to build capitalism and to get women to put in longer hours in the workforce by reinforcing coffee breaks. Did you know that? Somehow I knew absolutely none of this until a week ago. This is literally one of the most dramatic statements I've ever said. I think my own brain cells are still processing the gravity of the situation and this declaration that I'm publicly making on the internet. So there's no going back, Ali. There's no going back. I realized how my toxic and somehow unquestioned coffee habit plays a huge role in my self-actualization journey and how it actually relates back very heavily to my self-esteem and my mental health. How coffee ties into my mental health, which then ties back to my self-esteem. So all of those things are intricately related. So yes, it is actually a very big deal for me. Hopefully my perspective on coffee in my own life will spark some detective glasses for you in your own life, in your own journey, whether it directly has to do with your coffee habits or not. Recently, you might have noticed I've been posting these videos about self-esteem, right? In the past 5 or so years, I've been going on different levels of healing myself and creating a foundational self-love and self-esteem, which I didn't have great resources for when I was younger. And so I've been on this long and really intense journey of doing that, which also included me taking a social media sabbatical. In these past 5 years, it's been layers shed, cycles of integration, of building new things and letting go of other things. And I feel like I've gotten to such a clear point in my life where one of the last habits that I really have to examine now that everything else is gone is coffee. In my journey of building more foundational self-love, self-esteem, a better relationship with me, it required me to cut out a lot of harmful or unhelpful, generally just unhelpful things in my life. Coffee is truly one of my best friends. I know it's literally a liquid, so that sounds kind of sad, but I was actually really happy and chilling with coffee until about a week ago when I realized my whole relationship with coffee had become so upside down, and it was really this huge wake-up call. I've been asking myself to wean off of coffee for almost a year now, but I didn't make it a big deal at first. It was more oh, I'm gonna cut down on coffee. But because I spent some time abroad in Japan while still working, I ended up drinking a lot of coffee because I would have meetings in California hours and it would get kind of crazy. You know those Japanese bottles of black coffee? I would be drinking those in the middle of the night and my sleep schedule was all messed up. So I wanted to cut down coffee, but I just literally couldn't because of time zone stuff. Once I got back from Japan, pretty much just returned to my normal habit of drinking coffee and loving coffee, literally obsessed with coffee. I've been deluding myself though. Coffee is the advisor that I kept in my court without ever questioning its motivations because I'm so dependent on coffee. From an identity level, I feel really dependent on it, which sounds crazy to some people, and I'm going to explain exactly how so that it makes sense to you, or so you might be able to relate to something else in your own life. This is going to sound sad from a neuropsychology level, but I've accepted it. But coffee has been a huge source of comfort and consistency and stability to me over the years. Coffee was my childhood safety blanket. And every child eventually has to outgrow their safety blanket or stuffed plushies and step into the real world. And I feel like I'm suddenly forced to be at that point with coffee. So let me talk a little bit about my own history with coffee, which I've never shared before. The origin point of your addiction is really important for you to overcome your addiction, because in the origin point of our addiction, that's where our brains form the first connection and association with that substance, and then we just build off and off of that until then. I think any healing or release work that we do, or grief work, literally, I know this sounds so dramatic, but it feels like a breakup with coffee, okay, and it feels terrible. But any grief work that we do, it's the historical narrative that we tell ourselves. So the origin point of addiction and then the timeline is important for seeing the patterns of why you're addicted to something. In my case, I'm exploring the relationship with coffee right now. So my history with coffee was that I started struggling with body weight or body image issues starting from early middle school, because I am actually quite tall. So I've always been tall. So in PE class, I was taller than other girls. So when they weighed me, I weighed a little bit more. For some reason, that freaked out the 7th grade me. I was like, oh my gosh, why do I weigh more than everyone? I didn't understand BMI at the time, and didn't realize that because I was taller, maybe I'd weigh a little bit more. But basically at that time, I started developing body image issues. I started researching on the internet of how to lose weight. And one of the tips, I guess, was to drink coffee. And plus, I saw my mom drinking coffee a lot. She was pretty skinny. So I was like, okay, great. Well, let me just start this fun little coffee routine. I get to be such an adult. I would wake up in the mornings, make myself a cup of instant coffee, put like a 15-calorie creamer in it. Great. I would drink that. I'd go to school, and it became like my little like secret, fun little like thing where in my head I was like, oh, I had a cup of coffee today. Like, I'm so cool. I'm like such an adult. And that was where my relationship with coffee began. And oh my God, I'm so ashamed talking about this because since that point in 7th grade, I've never taken a real break from coffee, which is going to sound shocking to some people. And like, I am always shocked about this fact. I've only had 2 breaks with coffee. One lasted a week, one lasted a month. That was it. Literally every other day in that many years span of time, I was drinking coffee every day. Sometimes heavily dependent on coffee. So yes, when I say I have a coffee addiction, I legitimately have a coffee addiction. And when I say that coffee has been a huge source of comfort and consistency to me, it's because it has been in my life reliably since I was, how old are we as 7th graders? Like 13, 12? Coffee has been with me for half my life or more. And here's a story which I think most coffee lovers will be able to relate to a little more. A few years ago, when I was self-employed working on my YouTube channel, I came across this Graham Stephan, sorry, I forgot how to pronounce his name. He had a video on how his 25-cent coffee made him a millionaire. So I clicked it. Like, that was literally the title. It was like, how my 25-cent coffee made me a millionaire. So I clicked it, and it was basically him talking about the compound interest that he saved from making his own coffee versus buying a $5 or $6 cup of coffee every day, how that made him a millionaire over time. Me, right out of college, watching this video, guess what happened for me watching that video? I had the genius idea. So every morning I was drinking Phil's coffee, which is California coffee. If you know, you know. I was drinking Phil's coffee every day. That stuff is like $6, $7. So I was like, why don't I go work at Phil's? Because obviously I love Phil so much. If I go work at Phil's, I can learn how to make Phil's, so I will never spend money at Phil's again, and I will like save $1 million, according to Graham Stephan. Thank you, Graham Stephan. So what happened was I went to go work at Phil's, became even more addicted to coffee, and then would drink like 3 cups of Phil's a day. And then sadly, even after I stopped working at Phil's, I would still drive to Phil's and buy Phil's coffee every single morning. But now let me talk about the negative impacts that coffee was having on my life, and the negative impacts that's probably having on your life too if you're drinking a lot of coffee. So I'm just going to list them off. We're not even going to go into detail on these because they're pretty self-explanatory. First of all, I was getting health issues. I was going to my doctor complaining for like a year because I was having stomach issues because I wasn't eating enough and I was drinking too much coffee, black coffee. Money. Why am I spending $6 or $7 on coffee every morning? Even once a week, that's not even acceptable. A couple of times a week, not acceptable. Every day, like, not acceptable. Money, I was spending too much money on coffee. I'm iconic. I love wearing white. I would spill coffee on literally everything that I own. And so like it kind of ruins my aesthetic, you know, because here I am trying to like have nice things and everywhere there's coffee stains, which equals more money for me over time. Coffee overdose. I'm literally like that person where I will OD on coffee because that's how like fucking dumb I am. It's fine. It's okay. But like, yes, I've literally given myself caffeine poisoning multiple times at various ages. Yeah, and it's a thing. I'm also really sensitive to coffee, actually. Like, I'm addicted to coffee, but I'm still very sensitive to coffee. Sleep issues. I'm sensitive to coffee, so it would mess up my sleep. If I got my coffee timing wrong, wouldn't sleep at all that night. And then that created a really vicious cycle because then I'd have to drink more coffee the next day because I didn't sleep, and it would just F up my sleep cycle for like half a week. Yeah, like just from one mistimed cup of coffee. And then dehydration as well if I wasn't mindful of my water intake. Plus, did you know that apparently coffee inhibits some minerals and nutrients getting absorbed by your body? So like you could be eating a really healthy diet, but if you drink too much coffee, it can mess up the absorption of those minerals and vitamins and stuff. So those are like negative impacts of coffee. I'm sure there's more, but those are the ones that were really, really present in my life. And now I want to talk about the benefits of coffee. If you're still watching this video and you're someone who doesn't really drink coffee, and maybe you're just watching this video because you're like, what is going on? Or if you are a coffee lover who might have hesitations or sadness around letting go of coffee. Oh my gosh, I know I sound so dramatic right now. So one of the benefits was energy. If I wake up early in the morning, it's nice to have a cup of coffee to look forward to. It became part of my routines. So my morning routine being a core one, sometimes after lunch, I would get a midday dip, and it became part of my routine to have like an afternoon pick-me-up coffee to do my second block of work. It also was a big part of my travel routine because honestly, I love the feeling of just like leaving your Airbnb and hotel room, getting a local coffee, and strolling around the city with a coffee in your hand. To me, that is like a perfect day. Like I just love getting coffee in foreign countries, walking around with sunglasses on. Like that is like my ideal travel routine. Coffee is a cheap thing to order when you go out. If I wanted to go on a solo date or go to a cafe to like do some work or hang out, it felt like, oh, okay, I could just buy this cup of coffee. It makes sense. I need to drink coffee. I'll buy this cup of coffee. Then I can sit here for a few hours. It was just a very natural part of my routine. And then the last, I think, benefit was that it made my art life more fun. I would go around Japan and sit at cafes and write. Or sometimes when I'm doing art or something, it's nice to have a cup of coffee or tea. It just feels nice. It would make my emotionally fueled artistic side of my life just more dramatic and fun. As a writer, you know, I feel like writing and coffee goes hand in hand sometimes. So for all of those were benefits that I was getting from coffee. Also, I just love the taste of coffee. I don't know if I've just like trained myself or I've become used to it over time, but I just genuinely love the taste of coffee. I would drink it if there was no caffeine in it and coffee was just a neutral beverage like water. I would literally drink it all the time because I like the taste of coffee. And now we are at the most important part of this video. And that is about why I'm taking such drastic action around it recently. I had some very dark wake-up calls and identity jolts around coffee recently. And I'm the kind of person, and maybe you are too if you're still watching this, when I see the true nature of something, I can't unsee it. Like, I don't go back pretending that I didn't see it. Even if it's a really harsh truth and something I really don't want to wake up to, I just observe it and then I actually just integrate it into my learnings or into the rest of my life. Being a few years into my self-help journey, I very much am willing to do what is required to help myself be better and feel better. Even though sometimes we really have to go through the lows before it gets better. The dark truth that I woke up to is that coffee is a huge source of happiness for me. Like, I feel like even if I have no one in my life, which I'm thankful for all the people I do have in my life, thank you very much. But if I had nothing in my life, I still think of coffee as being there, right? It's like at this point in life, you have the things that you like in life. Like you have your hobbies, you have the things you like, you have your comfort things. Coffee was like probably number one. So when I started waking up to how addicted I really was to coffee and how I was blind to all the impact it had on my life until now, I got this huge sense of fear because I was like, coffee is one of my favorite things in this lifetime. It's pretty accessible. It's like a pretty accessible form of happiness to me. You might feel the same way about your addiction. It was so sad to me suddenly to realize that I had been on this coffee drug since middle school without even really being like cognizant of how this drug was impacting my body and my brain. Coffee had become such a core part of my identity and my day-to-day operations. The way that I behave is a person who consumes coffee. So the jitteriness, the moving around or the getting distracted or the energy, right? A lot of that is impacted by coffee. How come no one ever just shook me and was like, what are you doing? Thankfully I'm doing that for myself now. Yeah, it was a huge wake-up call, but I'm choosing to reframe it after a weekend of intense spiraling over it. Now I'm choosing to reframe it as an opportunity, because now I get to live this next chapter of my life and see what it's like on the other side. The thought of a future without coffee made me actually a little bit depressed. And the thought of waking up to a morning without my cup of coffee temporarily made me question why I should wake up, which obviously is concerning to someone who is really aware of their mental health and has been like on this journey of trying to self-actualize more and trying to build a more foundational self-esteem and self-groundedness, right? So if my whole sense of happiness and contentness with daily life can just be disrupted and thrown upside down just because I don't have a cup of coffee to look forward to every morning, what does that actually say about my life? Right? So that weekend I had a lot of really dark thoughts around coffee. But again, I talk about fear a lot on my channel, and after some mindfulness work and after some other things I'll talk about at the end of this video, I realized that it was just my monkey brain like freaking out and going to level 1,000. In reality, my journey with quitting coffee is much more in between. It's not so severe, right? It's not so black or white. There's obviously other things I have to look forward to in my day, and cutting out any addiction, the beginning of it is going to be really hard before it gets better and before you feel like yourself again and you feel like you can go about your daily routines and stuff. So basically I was catastrophizing the weekend that I realized I needed to cut coffee out of my life. But what ended up happening around a week ago, so this was like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, basically that weekend I had been going out, also was really productive during the days, so I drank a lot of coffee and really caffeinated beverages as well. And then for some reason, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I just decided I wasn't going to do caffeine anymore for that week. Like I just woke up and was like, I'm not going to like drink coffee anymore. Not like permanently, but those few days I was just like, I'm not going to drink coffee. What ended up happening was I was having these crazy crashes. As in literally I was sleeping normal hours, but then I would take 3 naps during the day, which is crazy because I'm not a napper. I'm not someone who takes naps ever. I was just so out of it, like getting some headaches. It was just this weird experience that I had. And then on Thursday or something, I had coffee, or no, sorry. Yeah, like on Thursday or something, I had coffee and then I had it again over the weekend. Even though I'm like trying not to drink coffee on the weekends, I ended up having it over the weekend for like no reason. And then my sleep schedule got super messed up from my bad coffee timing over the weekend. So basically what ended up happening was I ended up realizing, oh, I was having a caffeine withdrawal crash earlier in the week. And because it was so severe, it really made me wake up to the physical impact that caffeine had on my body. Before, I never really cold turkey just cut out coffee like that. So when I do things like that, I think my body just freaks out. And after I realized, oh, those weird symptoms I had at the beginning of the week was actually from caffeine withdrawal, I started getting really curious about it, doing a ton of research on it. And that's when I just discovered that there's a lot of people trying to cut coffee. Growing up, I just cite that one Harvard or whatever study in my head where it's like, moderate consumption of coffee is actually great for your health. It prevents heart disease, it prevents cancer. I don't know, I might be like, that might, don't quote me on that. It's like basically I read this one study and was like, great, coffee, good for your health. That is the narrative I stuck with literally my entire life. When I did some deep diving, I realized, oh, it's actually really conditional. And like, yeah, although it might not be net bad for your health, it can impact other avenues of your health, if like sleep, energy management, all of that, if not managed correctly, which obviously I do not manage my coffee correctly because I'm addicted to coffee and I just drink it for fun. I drink it whenever I need to pick me up. And obviously I have a problem stopping from doing that. So all in all, from a health level, from a dependence and addiction level, I just decided that coffee needs to go. There's a couple of other small observations I made around society and coffee drinkers over the past few years that also kind of made me feel like, oh, I want to cut out coffee a little bit more from my life. Now I'm at the point where I'm quitting coffee, which we're almost at the end of the video, so I'm going to talk about exactly what I'm doing and what my plan is. But a couple of other supplementary observations that eventually built me up to this moment was first the rise and advent of alternative beverages like mud water. Recently, I'm drinking these teas that are decaffeinated. They don't have caffeine, but they taste like coffee. Yeah, that's like literally how insane I am. I literally drink tea that tastes like coffee. Make it make sense. Observing how I felt on these coffee alternatives, I realized I felt a lot better. Felt less jittery. I had less acid reflux in my body. I felt more focused and just less irritated and on edge. Which, like, how sad is that? Because that's my whole life up till now. My whole life is in existence with coffee. To think about all the ways I might have been missing out on life or missing out on a different experience of life is like overwhelming for me to think about, so I'm not going to think about it too much right now. Then the other thing was my perception around people who had never drank coffee. And usually if there's a person that I don't understand, I'm like, what? How do you live life like that? It's so shocking to me. Someone who just doesn't drink coffee and doesn't rely on coffee. Oh my gosh, you can live life like that? I wish that I could do that, ? Whenever I have bits of envy or like extreme puzzled curiosity that other people trigger in me, I usually take that as an opportunity to get a little curious with myself and see what in me is really being brought to observe in that moment. And in that moment, it was, why am I so codependent with coffee? Those were other like small wake-up call moments that I had. So I'm going to tell you my exact plan now, and we're at the end of this video. And please join me if you were inspired by this video and you want to cut out coffee, or maybe you found this video because you're currently on a journey of cutting out coffee or cutting out any other kind of addiction. Join me because it's so much easier when you have people who are going through it with you. I decided I'm going to cold turkey quit coffee because there's been lots of iterations in my life before where I said I would quit coffee for like a week or a month, and I just never do because I keep drinking coffee, and the more I drink coffee, the more I want to drink coffee. So I decided at this point in my life, if I really want to give myself a fair chance, I need to go cold turkey quitting coffee. I'm actually on day 2 right now. It hasn't been as horrible as I originally was anticipating, but I've also heard a lot of people say on these forums that the first week is good and then the next 2 months are bad, or like, you know, some people are like miserable for like months. And some people just go back to drinking coffee. So I'm obviously very much at the start of my journey, but I am pretty determined to at least stop for a couple of months so then I can really mindfully make a decision of how I want coffee to be in my life moving forward. But my plan for now is to quit cold turkey. I'm generally going to just try to quit caffeine overall because I'm actually really curious what my brain is going to be like without caffeine. I heard that you can hit more flow states and just have calmer, natural and balanced sense of energy, which I would love. Like, please give me that. I'm ready. Maybe an occasional green tea here and there. So I also think I need to just cut out matcha because it's too dangerous for me. So that's my plan. And a word of encouragement is when I accidentally cold turkey quit coffee like a week ago without realizing what I was doing, it actually felt a lot harder. Like the crashes felt a lot harder. But this week, knowing that I'm quitting coffee and knowing it's going to be quite a challenge, I'm going into it really mindfully. I'm making sure I'm eating healthy, staying hydrated, exercising, all of that. That to be said, it's 2 days in and I've been snacking non-stop. Like my brain's like, I need some dopamine. Where's my coffee? I'm just gonna like reach for snacks. I've been sleeping more, but other than that, it's actually been like pretty manageable. Of course, I'm only 2 days in, so I can make an update maybe like a month or a couple months into the journey. But if you do have any questions or want to talk about your experience, feel free to DM me anytime at AliGong, or you can email me as well. And as to whether my era with coffee is really, really over for good, I think I'm definitely gonna change my entire relationship with coffee. Will I ever drink coffee again in my life? Probably yes, but I'm hoping that relationship is gonna look really different in the future. Thanks so much for watching. If you're undergoing any sort of addiction right now, remember to be compassionate and kind with yourself. Just the awareness is already so crucial. And I really believe that we can overcome anything if we put our minds and hearts to it. So I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.